Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. We'll be going to read from Brilliant as the Sun, a retelling of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Canto 9, Celestial Dynasties, and the chapter number is 13 today, Vaivasvata Manu's Descendants. Mukham karoti vachalam pangum langate girim yat kripa tamam vande shigrum din tarinam parmananda madhavam Shri Chaitanyeshwaram Hariyam Tatsa. Parikshit said, kindly tell me about the descendants of Vaivasvata Manu's other sons. Shukadev said, I will tell you about Ikshvaku's son Nimi, for his dynasty contains stories of Vishnu and his devotees. Nimi once desired to perform a great sacrifice. Listen to what happened. Nimi bowed to Vasishtha, O Holy One, I have decided to perform a grand sacrifice for the pleasure of Lord Vishnu, and I humbly request you accept the post of chief priest. My dear king, replied Vasishtha, I am happy to oblige you. First, however, I promised Indra to accept that post in his sacrifice. When that is completed, I will return and perform yours. Kindly wait for me until then. Throwing his shawl over his shoulder, the sage left for Indra's abode. Nimi silently watched him depart. He had fully expected Vasishtha to take charge. However, he was not prepared to wait for him. That could be a long time, as he had gone to the heavens. And just one of their days was equal to 6 earthly months. Human life was flickering and death could come at any moment. The sacrifice for Vishnu's pleasure had to proceed immediately. Many years later, when Indra's sacrifice was completed, Vasishtha returned to Nimi's palace to discover that the king had commenced his sacrifice without him. He became furious and stormed into the sacrificial arena to confront him. How dare you disobey me? He chided. I explicitly told you to wait for my return. King Nimi respectfully stood up. My lord, death can come at any moment. Therefore, I felt it wise to proceed without you. Vasishtha's face contorted with rage. He held out his right hand, pointing at King Nimi. You think yourself so learned that you dare defy me? For this offense, I curse you to die immediately. A violent pain seized Nimi's chest and he fell to his knees. Grasping his chest, he looked up at the spiritual master in shock. How could he have done this? As the painful seizures increased, Nimi's shock turned to anger. Mustering up all his remaining strength, he gasped, I did no wrong. It was my duty to worship Lord Vishnu. You forsook your duty to assist me and went instead to Indra. This was only out of greed for the wealth he would confer on you. Nimi's vision became blurred. The pain became so great that he collapsed prostrate on the ground. His face grimacing in pain, he said, You have lost your religious intelligence, therefore I curse you to die immediately. Parikshit looked confused. Did he die? Yes. Parikshit looked past Shukadev to Vasishtha, who sat with the other devotee. Then how is he still here? Shukadev said both Nimi, who also happened to be advanced in spiritual realization, and Vasishtha died at that moment. It's a long story, but suffice it to say that Vasishtha was reborn through the semen of Mitra and Varuna. Then they saw Urvashi. Nimi happened to be performing the Satra sacrifice at his death. The priests conducting the sacrifice preserved his corpse in fragrant oil and completed the rituals. It was so successful that all the gods personally appeared at the end. When the gods were fully satisfied, the priests petitioned them to restore the faultless Nimi to life. The gods agreed, but when Nimi was summoned to return, he pleaded with them not to imprison him in a material body again. The priests were confused. Why did Nimi not want his life back? Understanding their minds, Nimi said, It is not fear of death that makes me reluctant to enter a material body again. I can serve Krishna in either a material or spiritual body, so I am not afraid of anything. However, I can now attain my spiritual body and become Krishna's eternal associate. Why then would I accept a material body which is inevitably the source of distress? As fish always fear being eaten by bigger fish, everyone is always anxious. The gods agreed that Nimi should attain a spiritual body and live as the Lord's associate. When the priests objected that his presence was required for the good of the kingdom, the gods suggested he be allowed to manifest himself at will. He could appear whenever he deemed it necessary. Nimi was pleased with this solution, and the priests agreed out of affection for him. Still, a king was required to govern the state on a day-to-day basis, and Nimi had no heir. After conferring, the sages decided to churn Nimi's material body. From this, a son was born. The son was given several names, the chief of which was Janak, which means born unusually. He was also called Vaideha and Mithila, which means born from his father's corpse. He later constructed a city which was named Mithila after him. Shukadev then listed 19 generations of kings descending from Janak. The 20th king was also known as Janak. He found a baby girl as he plowed a field and adopted her as his daughter, naming her Sita. So the first Janak was different, and the 20th Janak was the father of Sita Devi, who found Sita Devi in a field. He plowed a field and adopted her as a daughter, naming her Sita. She later married Lord Ram. Consequently, Janak received a second name, Shridhwaja. Kshiradhwaja, not Shridhwaja, Kshiradhwaja. Kshiradhwaja's grandson Dharmadhwaja had two sons, Kirtidhwaja and Mitadhwaja. They each had a son whose names were Keshidhwaja, Khandikya respectively. Keshidhwaja was an expert in spiritual knowledge, whereas Khandikya was an expert in Vedic ritualistic ceremonies. Khandikya fled in fear of his cousin Keshidhwaja. Shukadev listed 12 generations of Keshidhwaja's descendants. The 12th, Kshemadhi, became a king of Mithila. Kshemadhi's great-great-grandson Upaguta was a partial expansion of the fire god. After listing another 13 generations descending from Kshemadhi, Shukadev said, "My dear king, all the kings in the Mithila dynasty were completely self-realized. Thus, despite staying home, they were free from the duality of material life." So we will continue our 14th chapter's reading, which is Pururva and Urvashi, next time. Thank you for joining. Hare Tat Sat. Hare Krishna.